I would like to ask about a behavior problem I see in my own dog. 9-year-old male German Shepherd. We have a house with a garden. We play in the garden every day. I try to tire him out. Also, I give food by hand every day by doing obedience practice. Because he had a food bowl aggression problem, this has decreased it a lot. But he has aggression. He wants to control who enters my room. Because since the first day I got him, he stayed in my room almost every day and had little contact with other members of the family. Sometimes he snarls when other family members try to approach him. And we played in the garden the other day. Then I took him into the house. I took him to my room and wanted to give him his toy, but he didn't want to. He made a growling sound, then he laid on the ground. A while ago, he got all the way to my brother's feet and glared directly at him. I think it was for dominance, but it was like he was taking my brother under him. Fortunately, I was there and intervened. I think there's something like dominance in this dog. And he is so calm in the garden and loves the garden so much. This dog really likes the garden.
Yeah.
He stays in my room when I'm at work. We are 6 people in my house, but only I am the one to take care of him because he growls, he could bite, and act dominant to others. He bit us a few times before. What can we do?
Oh, boy.
That's a loaded one.
Yeah.
That is a loaded one. Just by the looks of it, obviously, there's probably nothing we can do because I believe this guy's in another country. But so here's the thing: questions like this are so hard, right? Because and there's actually there's a lot of chatter in the dog training world of people that get really frustrated when they get questions like this. Because here's the thing: how can we be expected to there's no way we could just give a solution to this that's going to fix it, right?
Yeah.
All we could do is we could use a question like this as a good talking point to help people understand dogs better overall.
Yeah.
But it's not going to do much to help this individual person, right? When you're dealing with issues like this, you need professional help.
Yeah.
Right? Or you need to realize that there are dogs out there that are well past some people's skill set. Especially when you're dealing with power breeds, extremely dominant dogs, and dogs that are a mix of both of those that are having aggression issues.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the success rate on people being able to work through and manage those types of situations is very low depending on their situation.
Yeah.
You get into this is a family of 6 in a house, right?
Yeah.
You're dealing with a dog that's basically isolated to this guy's room. And it sounds like that's why they go to this garden all the time, is probably because the dog's isolated there all the time because it can't be loose with the family.
Yeah.
And then we take the dog out to the garden to try to let him burn off energy. You know what I mean? that's kind of the vibe I'm getting off of this.
Yeah.
And the issue with doing that is because the dog is isolated from stuff so much because of these issues get worse because of that isolation. The dog develops more intense territorial associations of these particular areas, specifically that room, right? And they become much more likely to defend that territory towards anything that may be seen as a threat, which is anything else in that house, it sounds like, right? Now, again, I'm probably paraphrasing all of this and kind of drawing my own conclusions based on what I think this guy is talking about. But these are really tough situations, right? So, root of this problem here, again, this probably is to some extent a dominance issue, right? I don't throw those words around all the time. I don't talk about needing to dominate your dogs and stuff because it's not like that stuff is... I don't think it's necessarily as important as a lot of people think it is. But when you're dealing with situations like this, everything to dogs is hierarchy, right? Yeah. Everything to dogs is somebody is, like we were talking about in the last question, somebody is controlling something at all times. Yeah. And when our dogs view us as somebody that is weak and not handling situations appropriately, they over time develop that association of needing to do it themselves.
Yep.
Right? So this usually starts when the dog is young, right? It usually starts, we get a cute dog, right? We take them all these different places. We feed them all these treats. We give them all these toys. We have everybody come and pet them, and we don't realize what these dogs biologically need, which is training, which is discipline, which is appropriate socialization as opposed to smothering them with affection and stuff like that all the time.
Yeah.
And we don't recognize the signs that our dog needs advocated for, right? So what happens is we have a lot of family members. We have a lot of people. We have this, that, where the dog is put in a lot of vulnerable positions where people are going and taking the dog's toys or trying to play with them when the dog is agitated or approaching and trying to pet and this and that. We don't read those signals and we don't create those boundaries for our dog.
Yeah.
And our dog over time starts developing the association that they need to handle those things. And they start doing it by growling. They start doing it by snapping. They start protecting their food bowl. They start protecting their toys, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And it creates problems, right? Then you get into, because these dogs are power breeds and very dominant to begin with, they're going to be more likely to try to test that dominance towards people right off the rip, right? So you get a young dog that, because everything is hierarchy, because we're not taking that leadership role when they're really small, they're going to start challenging us a little bit and being like, am I more dominant than this person, right? Do I have a stronger willpower than this person, right? And the second they make that association that they are with their owner, it's so tricky to reverse.
Yeah.
Almost impossible to reverse in some cases, you know? So, you know, you get into like, how do you solve situations like this? And it comes from, typically speaking, an outside person needs to develop a relationship with the dog where they are clearly in charge of things. They need to set the groundwork. They need to build the muscle memory with the dog of the dog being compliant to a human. Because right now, this dog is not compliant to anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's fact of the matter. This dog knows it's in charge of things.
Yeah.
And the only thing holding it back from being in charge of everything is walls, barriers, us putting them other places, keeping them away from these problematic things, right?
Yeah.
And the frustration of all of that is what creates the aggression.
Yeah.
Right? So we need to develop the association that the dog is compliant to a human being. And fuck the toys, fuck the treats, fuck all of that kind of stuff. It's not about that. It's about this dog realizing that somebody is not going to take their shit.
Yeah.
Right? Once you have that established with them, the only possible way to transfer it back to the owner is if that person is willing to do essentially a 100% complete reboot of their relationship with the dog, which means anything they think they know about this dog, toss it out the window, right? Accept the knowledge of the blueprint of how that new person created that relationship with the dog, right? So most good trainers will be able to look at a dog they're working with and be like, these are the things I did chronologically from A to B that helped me establish this relationship of being more dominant than the dog, right? And you teach the owner then how to replicate those things, right? And you prep them for the fact that along the way, what will happen is, because that dog has already an association with them of them being weaker than them, that they will face pushback along that way. And you have to prep them for how to address that pushback as it comes up, right? And again, you have all sorts of different caliber of dog as far as where they sit on that hierarchy of like how pushy they are, how confident they are, how much of these behaviors are just coming from a fearful place. Because in some cases, and especially with German Shepherds and stuff, because of how they're bred, like we talked about at the beginning, in some of these cases, a lot of the aggression that we see is just coming from the dog being scared. They're really not that head honcho dog, right? They're really just a big scaredy cat, and they're not seeing us advocate for them, which is why they're taking it into their own hands. And those are the easier ones to work through, and I would say that's the majority of the ones that we see. Right? The majority of the ones we see is the dog's scared. We're not seeing their signals. We're not able to alleviate that responsibility of handling those issues for them, right? So they start acting out on their own. And those ones we could adjust that relationship pretty quickly. But the confident, pushy, dominant ones, man, those are the tricky ones.
Yeah.
Those are the tricky ones for that reason, right? So that's how we would work through these types of issues, right? But I prep everybody for, you have to ask yourself sometimes, right? I have this conversation with people that call me that have serious aggression cases all the time, right? We work with a lot of aggression. We work with a lot of behavioral issues, and we do kind of specialize in that to some extent, right? But I would say that we don't get as many true deep-rooted aggression cases as you would think, because there's not as many out there as you think, and two, because we vet those people so heavily. Like when I have these conversations with these people over the phone, we're so black and white about it. We're so black and white about this is how hard this is going to be, and having that conversation of, is this the right dog for you? You
Yeah.
know, because a lot of the things you need to do with dogs like that, it's not what people usually sign up for. When
Yeah.
they get a dog, they don't want to have to manage and do all of these different
Yeah.
things. And they don't want to have this different type of relationship with the dog and stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
They just want the perfect being.
Not even perfect, right? They just
Yeah.
want a dog they don't have to worry about stuff with,
That's
which
true.
I get. And that's okay,
Yeah.
right? But this stuff is hard for those reasons, you know? And that's how I tend to look at a lot of these situations.
Yeah.
So,
Do you feel like it's kind of how this started out is kind of the same thing we were just talking about with the question prior, where the dog didn't want to come out of the certain room and everything, and it was just like kind of got schmoozed over, and the dog was allowed to just stay in that room, or is there more to it? Like, do you think that's like
elaborate on that. What do you mean?
we were the one before where the dog didn't really want to come out of the crate or just go under her bed and didn't want to go anywhere else in her house.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like that's kind of the same thing that happened with this dog? Like when it was young, like it just wanted to hide in there, and they were like, "Oh, well, he's just scared. Like we'll just let him stay in there," and then it became a problem.
If this is the case of a fearful situation, potentially,
Yeah.
But I don't think
You don't
that's
think
the
so?
case,
You think
right?
it's just-
I think that in this case, this dog is probably because it was displaying aggressive behaviors, whether because it was fearful or because it was really dominant. They isolated the dog.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Right?
Yeah,
The dog didn't willingly just
Yeah,
stay in
just
the room.
stay in the room.
Right?
Okay.
They're keeping the dog in the room to keep it away
away
from
from-
the rest of the family. Is my
Gotcha.
again my guess.
Yeah.
Right?
that makes sense. Yeah.
So different, right? It's a different situation where that creates all this frustration,
Yeah.
which creates the aggression,
Yeah.
right? It makes the dog more likely to act out aggressively because
Yeah.
they're just so on edge and pissed off all the time
Yeah.
because they're being isolated.
That's
right?
true.
Which is why it's a catch-22 because you can't just
Yeah.
leave them loose if you don't have training because there's going to
Yeah.
be issues. But if you isolate them, the issues get worse.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you do about, like,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's like the
Yeah.
same deal with dogs that are seriously freaking reactive, It's like people don't walk them or they walk them at weird hours because they don't
Yeah.
want to see triggers, but because the dog never sees triggers, every time they see a trigger, it's this novel thing,
Yeah.
which makes their reactivity even worse.
Yeah.
So the only solution for it is immediately starting training so that you could start working through some of those issues more
Yeah.
successfully.
Yeah, you can't hide from your problems.
Can't hide from your demons.